This is Brandon with Precision Defensive Solutions, and today we're going to address a very serious topic, and hopefully this helps you understand some things about self-defense and use of force that many don't. So with the everything that's happening right now, I think there's a lot of emotional feelings about some of the issues in Minnesota and around the country, and there's some really tough feelings about law enforcement, their use of force policies. What are they doing? What are they not doing? What's legal? What's not legal? And though I'm not an attorney, I am a subject matter expert when it comes to self-defense and use of force. And I want to talk about some very clear elements. Some very clear elements. One of those things is that if we can avoid confrontation in a lot of ways, and if we interfere in law enforcement operations, active investigations, arrests, things like that, that is in fact breaking the law. A lot of people will say, well, that's not breaking the law. It absolutely is. Protest is a constitutional right. And it's a constitutional right that I absolutely believe in. 100%, I feel like we should be able to protest and let our government know what our feelings are about certain subjects. However, I do not feel that if you are committing violent acts, damaging property, hurting others, putting others at risk, is protest. That in itself is rioting, and that's illegal. And we need to look at what that fine line difference is. And that fine line difference is, if you're standing on the sidewalk and you're blowing whistles and holding signs and screaming and yelling, fine. That's fine. But when you literally step in the middle of an active investigation or an arrest, you are in fact impeding investigation or an arrest, obstructing justice. That's a crime. And when you resist the backlash, things are only going to escalate. To be clear about this, when things escalate, things can go bad very, very, very quickly. Now, I know that's not something that a lot of people want to hear, but it's the reality of things. It is absolutely the reality of things. Let's look at what a lot of people are arguing about. And that argument is, what does the video show? All these cell phone videos, all these drone videos, all the video coming from security cameras, all this different stuff. What people don't seem to understand is that what the video shows is a 2D image. It is not what the human eye shows or tells us in the moment. It is a wide-angle lens, which is what we consider wide-angle lens for photography or videography versus what our vision actually sees, is two totally different things. Even on a normal angle lens, it is two totally different things. And it doesn't show everything that a person that is defending themselves, a law enforcement officer that is in the act of their duties, what they perceive and what they see in that moment. And when we look at that, we want a definitive answer. Outrage drives, we want answers now. And that's not realistic in a use of force case. In all reality, it'd take a year or more to investigate it. We have to look at what does a person see in the moment? What is their brain processing? Because not everything we see does our brain process. I know it sounds weird, but it's a fact. The other thing is we have to look at what is objectively reasonable in that moment, and that guides what level of force is necessary in that moment. Now, perception, when we're looking at perception of what's reasonably objectively reasonable, in that moment, and what the perception is in that moment. We're not talking about seconds, okay? We're talking, people say, well, these things, they had seconds. Well, no, they didn't necessarily have seconds. Distance, timing, environment, how close somebody is to it, the angles of it, how fast we perceive it, those are all things. And you can figure on between a half to 3/4 of a second to actually perceive something and start to take action against it. And this is where the difference between reaction and action, and why reaction is so much slower than action, and why distance is a major factor in success in self-defense. Because distance gives us so much more time to react. Now, those distances sometimes are seemingly not reasonable to some people because they don't understand the human capability of covering a long distance. So if you're looking at, let's say 21 feet, and we talk about the Tueller principle, and that somebody can reach us within a second to second and a half before a law enforcement officer could get their gun out of their holster and end the fight. Well, in that time frame, a lot can happen. And the reason is because by the time that officer would perceive that threat and start to take action, they don't have a second to second and a half to react. They have about 3/4 of a second to react by the time they process everything. And that's significant on time of how fast that actually is. It takes so much more time to do things than what we realize, because we're used to doing these things. You drive down the road, you're looking around, watching traffic. You're not focused on one little spot. You're looking around, and you're seeing multiple things. You're trying to take multiple things in. If you catch something with your peripheral vision, you'll start to turn and look to see for sure what it is, because the depth of our vision is so small. And we're talking about something about like this. Okay? And if we're talking about something like this, we're missing clearly what's out here. That's peripheral vision. What I'm talking about is what we see in our foveal vision of that's where our best chance of processing information is. So that's part of perception, is what do they see in the moment and in the middle of the mix. And while they have literally tenths of seconds to make a decision, in that fight, we can sit and we can look at all these camera angles from all these different angles. Oh, they should have done this. Did they have the time Or did they even process it in the moment? And it's not something that you can really train out of. It's something that that with training you can learn to work with, but it's not something you can train out of. It's literally how our brain processes information fed to us through our vision and through our hearing. And when we look at that perception, it changes things. When we understand those things, we look at things differently. At least we should. Experiences that we've had. Have we been in encounters before? Have we not been in encounters before? What is distracting in the environment? That can all play a part in how we process information. So be very careful about jumping to conclusions on self-defense situations, use of force situations, without fully understanding all the human performance factors, what the legal aspects are, because, you know, if we look at it from a private citizen standpoint, were we in a location lawfully, and were our actions lawful? And that seems to be where the lines keep getting crossed, in a major factor, in my opinion. Do I always think that law enforcement is always correct in their decisions? No. Sometimes they're just wrong. They're just wrong. It's normal human nature to be wrong. But was it purposeful? Or was it in the moment perception? And that's where the investigation has to play out. It has to play out. Regardless of it's a law enforcement officer or encounter with a law enforcement officer, federal agent, it doesn't matter in that moment, or if it's a private citizen in a self-defense situation. The investigation has to play out. What happened in that moment? What were they seeing? What were they thinking? What kind of process did they go through? And would a reasonable person look at that as reasonable action? Bias plays a part in decision making. And again, outrage drives things. We need to take a step back. We need to be more objective about it. We need to be patient. Let the facts come out. Let the investigation carry out. Because bad things can happen if you're acting impulsively. Let's avoid the impulse. Let's understand everything that happened and understand all the facts and all the elements, all the science behind it before we start passing judgment. I know this is going to make some people really unhappy because I'm not showing the outrage. And it's going to make the other side very unhappy because I'm not just jumping on their side of the fence. What I'm asking for is for the average person to try to be more reasonable about their decision making. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Take care of your neighbors. Treat them as if they were your own family. Treat them as if it was the way that you wanted to be treated. And live a safer life. Live a happy life. We'll talk to you soon.